Oli Griffiths, welcome to Beyond Stage Fright. You're a member of the Swingle Singers, which is a group of 7 a cappella singers who really have pushed the boundaries of vocal music. You sing arrangements of all sorts of different musical styles, and you even use your voices as instruments. The group started in the 60s when Ward Swingle got together a group of Parisian session singers to sing arrangements of Bach's keyboard music. The album Jazz Sebastian Bach catapulted the group to fame, and since then there have been over 50 recordings and 5 Grammy Awards. Now, you have a really busy international touring schedule. And what I wanted to know first of all was, how do you manage to work with the group and tour with the group for weeks on end?
Oh gosh, firstly it's a real privilege to do a job that allows you to travel the world. I think that's the thing I come back to so often is you find yourself in some small town in the middle of nowhere that you'd never go to on holiday or you'd never necessarily stumble across, and you're there with this group of people who really function more like a family than colleagues. I think that's part of the thing that happens with a touring group, is you're in each other's pockets so often and so much of the time, and you share so much of your life with each other that you end up feeling really more like a family than you do anything else. So it's an amazing privilege. Traveling the world, doing something you love, doing it with people that you love, and that you know very deeply and very well. Obviously it's not all glamour by any stretch of the imagination. I think like with all touring companies, there's the elements like early mornings and long flights and lack of sleep, and very dull, long travel days. And that stuff sometimes you could live without, but it's the means to the end, really, of getting somewhere amazing and doing a performance. I think it's an interesting life to live, being in a touring group like this. You have to have a very different way of thinking about your life. I find actually that when I get on a plane or on a train, and you get to the moment where you take off, it's like you switch off your home self a little bit. And I imagine part of that is a bit of a survival technique, knowing that you're going to be away for 5 or 6 weeks at a time. And you get into this zone of the touring you, and the one that is doing the travel and all of that stuff. And I think it's a little bit of a survival mechanism doing that. But we're very lucky in that we genuinely have a deep affection for each other, and that makes the travelling side of things really fun and really good, because you're adventuring with your friends.
How do you manage getting up early and the flights and all of those kinds of things, and then giving a concert at the end of the day?
Well, I think, every one of us has our own strategies for it. I think for me, there's an element of just knuckling down and getting on with it. I think it's very easy to get into that sort of woe is me mentality, like, I have to get up at 4 a.m. and I have to. And for me, I just think that sort of thinking and that sort of way of being is very unhelpful, actually. And you just get up and you get on with it, and you know that it's part of the job, and it gets you to the point where you want to be. And then there's obviously the physical side of things, where as a singer particularly, tiredness and dehydration and all of those things, they deeply affect your instrument and your ability to do your job properly. It's all the basics that everyone will always talk about, which is drinking loads of water and grabbing sleep wherever you can, making sure that the meals that you're eating are good meals, that you're getting the right fuel for your body. I think that stuff is really important on those long days, and also actually making sure that you can have fun in amongst it, making jokes out of it, trying to fit in a few things on those days that are genuinely enjoyable, so it doesn't all feel like hard slog. And of course you then get to the venue and you get to do a concert, and as soon as you're on stage performing, that lifts you into a whole other mindset completely.
How do you prepare for a concert?
Particularly when we're touring, so when we're on the longer tours, I try and keep my voice generally warmed up a lot of the time, because often you might end up arriving late at the venue because some travel's gone wrong or something like that. So and you don't have time to do a proper warm up, and the stuff that we have to do with our voices is relatively extreme. So we need to be able to our voices be ready. So I tend to try and keep myself at a vague level of warmed upness. That's not a word, but I'll go with it. As much as I can. So that's, lip buzzing in the shower in the morning just to get things going, and staying really hydrated. You'll find if you hang out with the Swingles for any length of time that all of us make weird noises the whole time just to check that our voices are still working. So you'll suddenly hear one of us go, or yeah, or like all these noises just to check that things are working. So psychologically we know we can go into a gig and we're okay and we can do it. I think also for me, half the battle is the psychological one. It's getting, when you've had a really frantic day of travel, or we might have rehearsed in the morning and then driven for 4 hours and then got to the thing and the sound check, and it's just been go, go, go. I personally need just that moment to sit down and not talk to other people. I usually go to the dressing room and we have, doing the makeup and getting ready and all that stuff, just put some headphones in, put some music on that is unrelated, and then just have half an hour of zone-in time where I just get my head stilled and quiet, and start getting myself focused, because I think, particularly when you do the same sort of performances, often you can get a bit scattered in your approach, and you can suddenly just find yourself like walking onto stage when you haven't really mentally prepared yourself at all. And then you're spending the first song, whatever, just trying to get your head into the right focused zone that you need then to do a whole 2-hour performance.
And would you say that the others have their own types of routines that help them?
Well, I know, for example, the girls, they always look stunning on stage, and part of that is that they I know for Jo particularly, she will say that part of her way of getting herself in the right headspace is that time sitting down and doing her hair and makeup. Because it's like, I guess it's almost like putting your costume on, putting your mask on, getting ready to do what you're going to do. I know for like Kevin, for example, who does a lot of our vocal drumming, and there are certain practical things he needs to do to make sure, and it sounds very strange, but even like the consistency of his saliva is correct for drumming. So, the brushing of the teeth and the drinking of the right amount of water, and so that everything is, the equilibrium is right for him to be able to do drumming for 2 hours vocally, which is quite a specific niche task. So we all have our different things. CJ, the other tenor, he's very much like, he'll just work right the way up until 5 minutes before the performance, and then he'll quickly put his clothes on, and then he's just straight on. So for him, he doesn't really want or need a time to slow himself down and focus. He can literally get ready in 10 minutes and walk on stage and be fine. But his history is from musical theatre, where he was doing a show 13 times a week, and I think that you learn. He was in Joseph on the West End and touring, so he was doing a lot of. I think you get into the habit in that of just being able to go straight into it because you're doing it so often. So that's more his routine. So we all have very slightly different ways of dealing with that.
What do you do about rehearsing when you're on tour?
Well, firstly, we only rehearse when we need to. So we're not one of the groups who has a rule about we have to do a certain amount of rehearsal every day. We'll rehearse when stuff comes up that we need to fix or we want to make better, and we'll rehearse when there's new material we want to put in. We tend to just do it. One of the great joys of us just being an a cappella group is that we can just go to one of our hotel rooms, just the 7 of us, sit round in a circle and sing. We don't need any equipment, we don't need any instruments, we don't need microphones in that. Obviously we sing on microphone when we're on stage, but in the rehearsal setting we don't need any of that technology. So we can squeeze rehearsal in almost anywhere, which is great actually, it's really useful. And then also on tour, our routine is on a performance day, we have a 2-hour sound check. And only part of that we use for actually sound checking. And the other part of that is used for rehearsing on microphone and rehearsing using our in-ears and using the live looping technology that we use. So we have this 2-hour slot. And on the longer tours, you really don't need a full 2 hour for the sound check. So that time is dedicated time every gig day to do rehearsal points on the stuff we do on microphone and using technology. What do you do about nerves when you're together as a group? Well, like you say, we all respond really differently to nerves. Somebody like me, I like, when I'm nervous, I talk too much. Some of the other guys in the group, they go very quiet and they need silence, they need quiet to get themselves G'd up to get on stage and not be affected by nerves. But for us, we always have, as a group, we have this moment just before we go on stage where all 7 of us are in the wings together. And that's actually a really important moment. For a start, it allows us, it might be the first time we've all been together, in the hour before the performance, and it allows us to sort of read the mood and the vibe of what's going on with the other people in the group. It gives you that moment of connection where you realise you're all in it together, and that's actually incredibly helpful to have that feeling of connection and togetherness. It means that even if one of us is very nervous about something for whatever reason, maybe their voice is feeling tired and they're concerned that something's not going to work well in the performance or any of that, when you're suddenly connected as part of that team and you're all together, it sort of takes some of the pressure off that, because you know that you've got people on stage with you who've got your back, and who are there with you and who will support you in that stuff. But also I think it's just about learning what each other needs. So, there are a couple of people in the group who, when they're nervous, just something as simple as a hug just before we go on will fix it for them. Or like for me, just a word of affirmation, or just someone saying it's going to be a good show, or something like that will fix it for me, and so it's about learning what we each need to get to the place where we just walk on stage and get it. And actually, in the same breath, when you do a touring job and you're doing a show again and again and again, sometimes there isn't enough nervous energy before you go on stage, particularly when you're tired, and you go on a bit flat, really, and then it's about learning the ways to get the energy up and to get us engaged and excited, because of course that audience, that may be the only time they ever see us sing, and it may be the thing that they wanted to see for a very long time, and we have a responsibility to give as energised and as connected a performance everywhere we go. Do you know, the habit we've got into, particularly in the voice dressing room in the Swingles, is we make up silly songs. So we'll be in the dressing room and one of us will just start singing something, just a phrase or something will come up, and then everyone else will join in, or we'll take one of our current songs but do it in like a bluegrass style or some completely other style, and we'll be just very silly and reharmonise it on the spot and make it up, and that for us works really well, of just getting us into that place of, oh no, this is fun and it's creative and we're creating something that is really great. We've got into a real habit of doing that. Actually, we do it on long car journeys. Often we'll just make up really ridiculous songs that will never see the light of day, and we really hope that no one else ever sees them because they're often awful. But it just helps us connect with that it should be fun. This whole process, as well as being an art form and something we hope has merit and emotional connection, should also be really fun. And that, I think, helps you energise in a really amazing way.
I've seen you do some incredible group improvisations on stage, just actually creating a song from scratch. What does that feel like in terms of nervous energy?
Oh gosh, it is so fun doing that. It's so terrifying and it is so fun. We've actually just started doing this in our stage show, just only in the last 2 months really, of doing a complete free improvisation with no boundaries, no rules. We just all breathe together and all start singing together and then just see what happens. And there's just this moment inside, I think all of us feel it, where you're just like, this could be a complete car crash, and we have no idea whether it's going to be good or bad or I mean, we've had no disasters yet, thankfully. But it's an amazing, do you know, it's one of the most exciting things we do at the moment on stage. The nervous energy is much higher in that moment than anywhere else. I mean, the other songs that we do, we've rehearsed to the point of stupidity. I mean, the muscle memory on it is right there, and the level of detail that we've gone into in the rehearsal process means that it's actually the difference between a bad performance of that and a good performance of that is not that broad, because we've worked so consistently at it. Whereas with the improvisation, it's a complete free. I mean, it could be anything. It could turn out to be anything. So I think it's one of the only moments in the show where there's like legitimate. I can see it around the group, like legitimate nerves. But the payoff from that as well is remarkable, because when you're in that moment, we do it with our eyes shut as well, so we feel very much like in a zone with each other. And when something like cool happens in that moment, the feeling of elation in that moment is really remarkable. The feeling of connectedness, and when two of us go the same way without knowing that we're going to do it, and there's that synergy that happens on the stage, it's sort of an unbeatable feeling, really.
You talk about it being either a car crash or incredibly exhilarating. What happens when you have what you feel is a car crash on stage?
Oh, it happens all the time, doesn't it? I mean, it happens to everyone in every group. There are always things that go wrong. For me, a big part of that process is learning how to just cover it completely. learning to act. I think that a big part of performance is acting. Something might go horribly wrong. I mean, we had an experience not long ago where one of the singers just completely forgot, just blanked completely on the song, and we're all doing the pads behind. She's doing at that moment an Italian aria, just before she breaks out into this incredibly virtuosic high opera thing. And she just forgot the tune and the words, and she sung it 100 times, and she just forgot it, and all of us were just face dropped. We were thankfully facing the back at that time, so no one could see our faces. But she just kept going, and she made it up, and she made up the tune, and it took her a good 30 seconds to get back on track and for it to, to happen again. But she just the whole way through just acted as if it was exactly what was meant to be happening. And yes, I know, I'm completely in control here. And inside, she was panicking crazily, but on the outside, it was just like, no, calm. This is exactly right. This is what's meant to be happening. We went out after the performance, and there were some people in the audience who'd seen a number of our shows. And we were like, oh my goodness, did you see what happened in that song? And they were like, what happened? And we were like, well, she forgot it completely. She made up the words for a good 30 seconds and made up the melody for a good 30 seconds. And they just had no idea at all. So I think part of the trick of nerves, anyway, across the board, is learning how to act through them. You might be panicking and your heart might be racing and all manner of things might be going on, but if you can keep your face looking, I'm in control, I'm happy, I'm really enjoying this, then 9 times out of 10 the audience will have no idea, even if fairly major things go wrong. It's just amazing what people don't notice, because they don't know the music as well as you do. You know every intricacy of what's going on, but the audience, they may have only heard it once before or never before, so as long as you do things with confidence and with a smile and with assurance, and you don't do that shocked, oh no, something's gone wrong face, but you keep everything acted in control, you can get away with rather a lot.
Do you think your ability to do group improvisations and create on stage really helps with that kind of thing?
Oh, definitely. It's been amazing for us actually. Just holding everything a little bit lighter, and being less precious about when little things go wrong, and therefore being able to just go with the flow a little bit more, and just knowing that music is a dialogue anyway, and yes, there's notes on the page, and yes, there's stuff that's happening, but particularly in live performance, there are things that shift and things that change and things that grow and evolve, and being able to go with that, I think, creates the most memorable musical moments, because sometimes it's when things go slightly off kilter that you have those moments of really drawing together as a group, or as an ensemble. There's like a sudden moment that everyone is focused and right in the zone, and then really amazing things can happen. But you need to have the sort of freedom of, just freedom of expression and the ability to know it's okay to just let go a little bit and just let it work itself out. Because when you hit panic mode, that's not conducive to recovery from an error, but also for creativity to flow. So if you can just be a little bit relaxed around things going wrong, I think you can actually create some quite magical moments.
We've been talking quite a lot about live performance. How are your nerves affected when you go into the recording studio?
Actually, I find the recording studio is the place where my nerves really are affected. I'm much more nervous in that context than I am on a stage. Mainly, I guess, partially because I'm much less familiar with that. I haven't been recording since I was 5, but I have been singing on stages since I was 5, so I'm much more comfortable in that arena. Also, there's absolutely nowhere to hide when you're recording. You're on a mic, your voice is isolated, soloed, and in order for a recording to work well, you have to have a level of vulnerability about your performance so it will translate. Live performance is a dialogue, and it's a gift because people can see right in front of them what's happening. Whereas with a recording, it's one noise among many that you're hearing all the time with no visual context or storytelling context. So in order for that to be powerful or moving, you have to get yourself to a place of vulnerability and openness emotionally and connectively for that to translate when someone listens. And that's really scary sometimes, like taking risks with your voice. And on Deep End, the album you mentioned earlier that we've just recorded, there's a solo that I do that our producer was just making me sing quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter and taking tone off. And I was really scared about that because you rely on your tone and you rely on that thing that is your sound. to carry what you're doing. He was like, no, less. And just being open to that and trusting other people's judgment on your instrument and what you're doing rather than your own is a scary process, but ultimately very rewarding. But I think the products, when you take risks in that space, are amazing as well, because you come up with this thing that you didn't know you had in you, and that you've just had drawn out of you little by little. But also part of the nerves of recording is that that's then there forever. A live performance is great because it happens and it's gone. It's a moment that's shared in a room, and then you move on. And so if something doesn't go brilliantly that time, next time you do it better because there's a next time, and there's that whole fluidity of it. Whereas when you're recording an album or recording a video or doing a TV performance or something like that, it becomes a fixed point. It becomes a thing that exists, and you have to be happy with that, or not. And if you're not, then it's there forever. So I feel the pressure much more keenly on recording than I do on live performance.
Would you say that the need for perfection in recordings affects nerves more than in a live performance?
Yeah, definitely it does. Obviously, particularly with the way that the world has gone with music, the general listenership of music expects a much cleaner product than they did even 10 years ago. Particularly in vocal music, everything is so clean and tidied and tuned and polished, and there's, like in pop music, everything is so produced that there's a level of expectation of perfection on recording that I actually think is not very healthy. I'd much prefer to hear breaths and hear moments where tuning isn't exactly perfect, but it's feeding the emotion of the song. But you're totally right. The pressure for perfection in that moment is huge. Obviously, there are editing tricks to fix things, but you don't want to rely on that. You'd much rather get it right in the room. And actually, we as the Swingles have come up with a recording sort of process that works very well for us, which is singing in the same room but in isolation booths. So we all sing at once rather than tracking up. We'll sing together with each other in a room. We can see each other, but we're completely isolated, so that if something does go wrong, we can fix it. And it's great as well, because again, the energy of our particular brand is about the interaction between the 7 singers. It's about that give and take between us on stage, and the passing the emotion around, passing the songs around. I think it feels quite a collaborative group that we're in. So recording your own part in isolation feels wrong, really, in that setting. We want to be there together, and I think we get the best results when we are together singing. So that works well. And actually being in that environment helps with the nerves, because it feels more like a performance because we're all together.
How do you manage the issue of one person making a mistake or having nerves in the middle of a recording and the whole group having to do a take all over again?
Firstly, I think you just go in knowing that it's going to happen to everyone in that day. You make mistakes. It's the way of it. So you don't hold people to account in a firm way, in that way, because it's going to happen to you in 10 minutes time. It may happen to them right now, but it's going to happen to you this afternoon or whatever. So I think just holding real short account on that stuff is really important, and just knowing that that's part of the process, that's part of how recording works. I think particularly in these situations that are so high pressure, there has to be a level of kindness involved in the way that we interact with each other. I have to be really careful about the way you give critique, or the way that you call people out on the mistakes. Sometimes it's a mistake that people don't know they're making. So it's learning real kindness in how you deliver those sort of things. Creating a space where it's okay to go wrong, because that's just part of the process. I think it's utterly damaging when people are aggressive and forceful in those moments, because it causes people to shut down rather than maintain an openness of spirit and of being. So yeah, I think it's really important to try and learn a kindness in how you communicate in those environments.
You make a number of videos. Is that whole process different or similar to making a CD?
Oh gosh, videos. It depends actually what type of video. I find the most difficult thing of all are the live performance videos that we do. So we did a couple of videos last year in this beautiful little vintage shop in Dalston, and it was 3 of our songs. that we recorded, and it's a tiny room, and we had two guys with cameras who were right up in our faces with these cameras, and one of them was my solo, and I had to look right down the lens of the camera as I sang this song and pretend I was singing it to someone on the other side of this lens. I find that completely terrifying in a way that I find nothing else terrifying. It's like when you're doing a TV interview or something, you have to talk direct to a camera. There's something so weirdly disconnected about that, but you're being asked to be so connected, and I find that very difficult. I think for me, it's one of the hardest things that I do with the job is that. But it's such a vital part of our profession at the moment, is being engaged in that way. Sort of the online media and the YouTube thing, and the sense that your audiences and your fans get to know you a little bit, and that they get to know your personality a little bit, and that you're connecting directly with someone on the other side of the world by this incredible technology.
And then if we go to the opposite extreme, I've seen you doing flash mobs and bursting into song, having been pretending to be normal people on the tube, for example. What does that feel like?
Oh gosh, it's really, that's a fun one. There are real nerves come into play with those things, because you have just some people really hate that stuff. So if the stranger sitting next to you on the train, or we did one in a hotel in Dubai once around there, and some people, when you pop up next to them start singing, they really dislike it, and then you're trying to engage them and get them all involved, and they're just like, no, I hate this, and you just never know how those ones are going to go. But then the payoff in terms of adrenaline and rush on those things, when they go well and things, people get really involved, and the payoff in that way is amazing. It's so much fun.
What have been the most fun things you've done as a group in terms of performing?
Oh gosh, there are so many. I mean, the spectrum's so wide. We do. There was a piece written for the Swingles in the '60s, a Barrier Sinfonia, that is contemporary work. It's sort of postmodern music, like crazy. It's recitation and bangs and crashes, and the 8 singers in that are sort of part of the orchestra. I absolutely adore this piece. It's a 45-minute masterpiece in my mind. And we got the amazing opportunity a few years ago to do a run of performances of that in La Scala in Milan. And you just have that moment of going, oh my goodness, I'm on the stage in La Scala in Milan, and this is my job, this is my life, and that is just a remarkable experience to do something like that. We also actually had the amazing privilege a few years ago of doing sort of a back choir for Jamie Cullum in the Royal Variety performance. And I will never forget that moment of us standing behind the curtain in the Palladium in London, hearing the announcer out on the stage saying, Jamie Cullum and the Swingle Singers, and the curtain going up. And the Palladium's a huge house, it's sort of a 2,000-seater. And just the rush of air as the curtain goes up, and then suddenly there's this room and the cameras, and then you start singing and you go, and it's just right there, and it's live TV, and there's no room for error in that at all. It's just remarkable feeling you get from that sort of live performance. But then on a complete flip side, I remember very clearly this one time we were in Regensburg, and we were performing in a courtyard there. But off to the side of the courtyard was this little chapel that just had the most incredible natural acoustic. And just because it was beautiful, the 7 of us went into this room with no one else, just shut the door. And there's an Eric Whittaker choral piece called A Boy and a Girl that we used to perform a lot. Really rich, crunchy, dissonant harmonies, and a beautiful narrative about love throughout life. It's just a really gorgeous piece of music. And we just stood in a circle facing each other and sang this song in this acoustic with this reverberance and stillness. It was such a special moment, because I think all of us were in tears by the end of it, because it was just this moment that we shared where it was so beautiful and so still and so rich, and there was no audience for that experience. It was just the 7 of us in the room with this incredible acoustic, and the feeling is as rich and as edifying as when you're in an audience of 2,000 people. So those are just a few things that spring to mind over the last few years.
And what does it feel like when it's all going really well on stage?
Oh gosh, it's that feeling like you're part of something bigger. All of a sudden, when things are locked and the tuning's good and the timing's good and everyone's on the same page, you suddenly feel like you're part of a bigger something that's happening. It's utterly exhilarating. It's because you can't plan for it and you can't force it. And sometimes it just happens, and everyone on the stage knows it's happened. And I actually almost love the moment after it's happened more than I love the moment it's happening. When you come off stage and everyone just turns and looks at each other with this like wide-eyed, what just happened there? And I think we live for those moments because so much of a professional like touring job is repetition. Actually, we're doing, there's pieces that I've sung every show for 5 years. And so much of it is repetition, and having those moments where everything comes together and there's synergy and it feels really connected and things work and the energy is like right there and it feels like the air almost gets electric. You can feel that sort of buzzing in the air. You live for those moments because it reminds you the incredible privilege it is to do a creative job, or to be sort of part of that thing where because that's only going to happen. That moment will happen once, and then it's gone. And I think that's part of why it's so powerful, is because it's so fleeting. It's not something you can bottle, and it's not something you can reproduce at will. It's these moments just happen sometimes, and there's a delight in it as well. I think, isn't there? There's like a childlike glee that pops out when something goes really well, where you just want to grin. And actually, often you look around. We were talking earlier about trying to hide the panic on your face. I think the one thing you should never try and hide is that moment of real glee when something feels really great. I think we should grin, and we should let everyone know that this is a fun moment. Professionalism only goes so far, I think, and I think having a big grin on your face on stage is just fine. Letting an audience appreciates the fact that you're enjoying what you're doing as well.
Oli Griffiths, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you very much for having me.